I shouldn't have opened that box. That's what I keep telling myself, even now, even after everything that's happened. It was supposed to be a harmless favor, just helping my friend clean out her late aunt's house, an old colonial perched on the edge of town, the kind of place that always seemed to have a shadow in every corner. She was sorting through clothes in a cedar wardrobe when she found it, a dress wrapped in faded tissue, ivory with a faint shimmer that caught the dusty sunlight like breath. She joked that it might fit me, that it could be funny, that I'd pull it off better than she ever could. I laughed, but my laugh felt thin, nervous, a little too high. I said yes without thinking why. It felt strange when I first touched it. The fabric was cold, almost damp, but soft, like it was remembering warmth from somewhere else. I slipped it over my shoulders, just to amuse her. The silk whispered against my skin, and I remember her laughing, telling me I looked unsettlingly natural. I laughed too, but for a second the laughter sounded like it came from somewhere behind me. The air changed. I could smell something faint, lavender, and something metallic like rust. The mirror at the far wall was old, clouded around the edges, but clear enough to show me standing there. Or at least someone who looked almost like me. My shoulders seemed narrower. My face looked softer. My friend didn't notice at first. She was digging through another box. But I stood there staring, and the longer I looked, the more I didn't recognize myself. It wasn't just that I looked different, it was the expression. My reflection was smiling when I wasn't. I blinked, and it was gone. Just me again, pale and startled and trying to laugh it off. But the moment I tried to take off the dress, the zipper refused to move. It wasn't stuck. It just wouldn't move, as if the fabric itself had decided it belonged where it was. My friend came over, tugged, frowned, then said she'd fetch scissors. I told her not to. I don't even know why. Maybe I didn't want her to cut it. Maybe I didn't want to stop feeling what I was feeling, that strange, uncanny calm that was starting to spread through me like warmth from a forgotten memory. That night, after we locked up and went home, I caught myself touching my collarbone in the mirror. My skin felt different, smoother somehow, softer. I brushed it off as nerves. But when I looked at the reflection again, I saw that same faint smile. Not mine. Hers. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard silk rustle. Not from the closet, from right beside the bed. I woke up before dawn, though I don't remember falling asleep. My room felt different, like someone had exhaled a sigh that never ended. The air was cool, heavy, almost damp. I sat up and saw the dress hanging from the chair across from me, the same way I'd left it, except, no, that wasn't right. I distinctly remembered folding it into a bag the night before to return to my friend. Now it hung there neatly, the fabric smooth, untouched by creases, as if someone had pressed it with care. I stared at it for a long time. My reflection in the window looked pale, eyes ringed dark, as if I hadn't slept in years. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that this was just guilt or stress, or maybe a lingering unease from wearing something that didn't belong to me. But the more I looked, the more I felt a pull. Like the dress was waiting for me. Like it knew I'd come back. By the time I got to work, the feeling hadn't left. Every surface felt foreign, every sound too sharp. My coworker asked if I'd changed something, my hair, maybe. I said no, but she frowned and told me I looked different, like I'd been crying. I hadn't. Not yet. That evening, when I came home, I couldn't help it. I took the dress again. I told myself I just wanted to look at it under proper light, to understand what made it so strange. The moment I touched the silk, my hands trembled. It was warm this time, warm like skin. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. I slipped it on again. The air shimmered faintly, the way heat bends above asphalt, except this was cold. I looked into the mirror and felt a pang, like recognition. My face was mine, but not entirely. Cheekbones subtly higher, lips softer, eyes with a glimmer that didn't belong. My voice, when I whispered, sounded lighter, almost musical. Then I saw her again. Not a reflection, not a shadow, her. Standing just behind me in the mirror. The same dress, the same eyes. But hers were filled with something, grief, or longing, or both. When she spoke, her voice wasn't a sound. It was a thought pressed directly into my chest. You borrowed it. Now you wear it. Keep it. The light flickered, and the mirror went dark. I stumbled back, yanked at the dress, the zipper unmoving once again. But I could feel her, inside me or around me, whispering with every beat of my heart. I wanted to scream, but instead I smiled, and it wasn't mine. That night, I dreamt of a woman walking through a field of pale flowers under a silver moon. Her hair brushed her shoulders, her hands clutching the hem of that same ivory dress. She turned, and her face was mine, but older, wiser, sad. When I woke, I could still smell lavender. I told myself I'd burn it in the morning, but when I opened my eyes, I was already wearing it again. I didn't remember putting it on. I didn't even remember touching it. But there it was, hugging my body as if it had never left. The silk lay against my skin like breath, the weight of it perfect, too perfect, like it had been sewn for me. I stood in front of the mirror, trembling. The morning light caught the edges of the fabric and scattered it across the room in soft, ghostly shapes. For a moment, I couldn't move. My reflection was calm, serene even, a quiet confidence in her eyes that I didn't recognize. My own heart beat too fast, my breath uneven, but she, the version of me in the mirror, was still. Then she raised her hand. So did I. But she stopped before I did, her fingers frozen midair, as if reaching toward me through the glass. Who are you? I whispered. The room swallowed my voice. And then she blinked. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the rug. I tore at the zipper again, nothing. The sound that came from my throat wasn't fear exactly. It was a kind of desperate disbelief. I felt the walls around me hum, a low vibration that seemed to echo inside my bones. The mirror surface rippled like water. Then quiet. A single phrase filled my head, soft but certain, like the hush before a storm. You said yes. I didn't understand. Not fully. But the memory came rushing back. The laughter in the attic, the way I'd agreed to try on the dress without hesitation, the faint pulse I'd felt beneath the fabric as if it had its own heartbeat. You said yes. That was enough for her. The hours blurred. I tried everything, pulling, cutting, soaking the dress in water, but it wouldn't come off. It clung tighter the more I fought it. My skin burned beneath the seams, not painfully, but like it was being rewritten, molded. My reflection shifted again, so slowly, I thought I was imagining it. My jaw softened. My neck lengthened. My frame grew delicate, graceful. My voice, when I finally managed to speak again, sounded right. Not like a stranger's. Not anymore. And that terrified me most of all. I called my friend, tried to explain, but my words tangled, my voice breaking into something unrecognizable. She said she'd come over, but when I looked at myself again, I realized I didn't want her to. I didn't want anyone to see me like this, half changed, half borrowed. By the time night fell, I felt her again, the woman from the mirror. Her presence wasn't just around me now. It was within, whispering in my thoughts, moving my hands when I wasn't sure they were mine. I stood before the window, city lights shimmering below, and she spoke again. You fit better than I ever did. A tear slipped down my cheek, though I wasn't sad. Or maybe I was just not my sadness. It was hers. It was both of ours. That was the night I stopped fighting. And that was the night the mirror smiled back, not as something haunted, but as something whole. The next morning, I woke to birdsong outside my window, soft, delicate, almost fragile. It should have been comforting, but it wasn't. I could feel her there, beneath my skin, humming faintly, a pulse that wasn't mine. When I breathed, I could taste lavender and iron, the scent of something that used to be alive. I sat up slowly, half afraid to look down, half afraid not to. The dress had changed again. The ivory fabric seemed brighter, cleaner, as though it had been washed in moonlight. The faint shimmer along the hem had deepened, turning almost silver. My hands looked smaller now, the nails smoother, as if they'd been filed and polished overnight. I touched my face.
Softer.
Every edge that used to define me had been smoothed away. When I stood, I nearly lost my balance. My center of gravity felt different. My body no longer obeyed me quite the same way. It flowed, it moved, it graced the air rather than cutting through it. And when I spoke my own name aloud, the sound felt foreign, like a story that didn't belong to me anymore. I thought about calling my friend again, about telling her I couldn't do this, that something was wrong, that the dress wouldn't come off, that my own reflection was no longer mine. But as I picked up the phone, my hand froze. Because for just a heartbeat, I didn't remember her name. I set the phone down slowly. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye. She was standing closer this time, so close that if I leaned forward, our foreheads might touch. The edges of her image shimmered, ghost-like but real, a perfect overlay of my own shifting form. And for the first time, she spoke out loud, her voice soft as silk against my ear. "You're almost there." I shook my head. There where? To where I ended. Her tone was calm, but something in it ached, like a memory replaying too many times. The mirror's surface rippled again, and I saw flashes, her walking through that old attic, carrying the dress in her arms, her eyes tired, afraid, but resolute. I saw her writing something on parchment, folding it carefully, tucking it into the lining of the dress before sealing it away in that cedar wardrobe. I felt her emotions as if they were mine, grief, guilt, a desperate longing for freedom that the world had refused her. She whispered something then, a sentence that didn't belong to memory but to destiny. "The only way out is through." I reached up, touched the glass. It was cold. My reflection smiled again, and this time, I didn't fight it. I smiled back. That was when the knock came at the door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. When I opened it, no one was there. Only a small envelope lying on the mat, my name written in looping, old-fashioned script that I didn't recognize but somehow remembered. Inside was a faded photograph, her, the same woman from my dreams, standing beside an open mirror, wearing the same dress. But her eyes were mine. I must have stared at that photograph for hours. My name written in ink that had long since faded, the corners of the paper soft as if it had been held too many times. Her eyes, my eyes, looked straight into the lens, not with fear but with something far heavier. Understanding. The kind that doesn't comfort you, only confirms what you already dread. I turned the photo over. On the back, scrawled in the same looping script, were 5 words: "Return what cannot be kept." The message meant nothing and everything at once. The dress rustled faintly against my legs, as though it understood. I stood in front of the mirror again, holding the photo up beside my reflection. The resemblance was uncanny now. My face, her face, was almost complete. The last fragments of who I'd been were fading like mist at sunrise. My voice, when I spoke, trembled with a softness that frightened me. "What are you doing to me?"
She didn't answer this time.
She didn't have to. The truth was already there, woven between the fibers of that cursed silk. The dress wasn't a garment, it was a vessel, a memory stitched into fabric, waiting for someone to wear it long enough, to feel deeply enough, to give it breath again. And I had said yes. That night, I took the photograph and the letter and returned to the old house. The key my friend had given me still fit the lock, though the door resisted at first, swollen with time and neglect. The air inside smelled of cedar and dust, just as before, but something else lingered beneath it now, a faint trace of perfume, faint but alive. The attic creaked above, and my body moved before my mind caught up. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last. The moonlight poured through the cracked window, pooling across the wooden floor in silver puddles. The mirror stood where we'd left it. The wardrobe, open. Empty. When I approached the mirror, it no longer showed my reflection. Instead, it showed her, the woman from the photograph, standing where I stood, her hands folded neatly in front of her, eyes patient and kind, as if she had been waiting centuries just to see me arrive. "You came back," she said, though her lips didn't move. Her voice came from everywhere at once, from the walls, the air, my own chest. "I don't know what you want," I whispered. Her head tilted. "You do." And I did. Somewhere deep down, I had known since the first moment I'd touched the fabric. She hadn't cursed me. She had invited me to finish something she could not, to carry her memory until it found peace. But what was peace for someone who no longer existed? The mirror flickered. I reached out again, but this time, the glass didn't feel solid. It gave way like water. My fingertips sank into it, rippling light outward in slow waves. For one breathless instant, I saw her standing on the other side, reaching for me. Our hands met, and for the first time, the warmth wasn't cold or haunting, it was human. She smiled. Almost. And then she was gone. The attic went still. Only my reflection remained, me, entirely transformed now, the borrowed face no longer borrowed at all. But in the silence, I could still hear her heartbeat beneath mine. The night after the attic changed everything, I dreamt I was standing inside the mirror. The air there felt different, thin, glimmering, as though made from sighs. The walls shimmered with faint reflections of lives I couldn't name, women brushing their hair, crying in silence, smiling before fading into smoke. They all wore the same dress.
Mine. Ours.
When I woke, my hands were trembling. My hair, longer now, brushed against my shoulders in the same way hers had in the photograph. My body had grown used to the rhythm of movement that wasn't mine, the soft tilt of the hips, the instinctive grace that came when I reached for something. And yet, beneath the calm, a strange dread coiled, because the more natural it felt, the less I remembered how I used to move. I tried writing my old name on paper. The letters looked wrong, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I stared until they blurred, and then I saw the ink start to run, bleeding like tears across the page. It was then that I realized I wasn't just becoming her. I was replacing her. The dress's seams seemed to pulse faintly when I thought about that, not menacingly, but like a heartbeat answering my fear. I whispered, "Who are you?" into the still air, and the room whispered back, "You know me." Later that day, I returned to the mirror again. It had changed too. The glass was clearer, brighter, almost alive. My reflection was sharper, every detail crisp, my lips, my hair, my eyes, all so unmistakably feminine that for a moment I forgot there had ever been another version of me. I tilted my head and smiled just to see if I still could. The reflection smiled first. That's when I noticed the shadow behind me. A faint silhouette, faintly human, faintly trembling, standing where no one was. I turned nothing, but the scent of lavender deepened, thick and sweet, clinging to the air. The reflection behind me, though, was still there. A faint outline of someone older, frilier, watching, almost pleading. "Return what cannot be kept." The words from the photograph burned into my mind again. What couldn't be kept? My life? My body? My identity? Or was it hers that couldn't stay, fading into me as I became her? That night, I heard her voice again, clearer than ever. "You're wearing more than silk. You're wearing a promise." I pressed my hand against the fabric. It pulsed beneath my fingers, steady and alive. Then what happens when it's fulfilled? The mirror answered with silence, but my reflection smiled faintly, knowingly.
I think she pitied me.
Before I fell asleep, I placed the photograph on my bedside table. When I woke in the middle of the night, it was gone, and in its place lay a single white thread from the dress. It was warm to the touch. And when I looked in the mirror again, her shadow was gone, but her eyes were still mine. I didn't leave the apartment for 3 days after that. The world outside felt too sharp, too loud, as if every sound might cut through the fragile thread that held me together. I kept the curtains drawn, the lights low. Every movement, every breath felt borrowed. When I walked past the mirror, I caught her posture in mine, shoulders soft, chin poised, the quiet dignity of someone who had lived a different life entirely. The dress no longer felt like fabric.
It was my skin now.
I could feel its pulse, the faint vibration of something awake just beneath the surface. Sometimes, when I spoke, the sound didn't even feel like it came from my throat. It came from us. I tried to document everything, to write it down before I lost more of myself, but the words came out in a script I didn't recognize, looping and elegant, the same handwriting that had spelled my name on that envelope. I dropped the pen and watched the ink bloom into the shape of a petal. Lavender again. Always lavender. That night, I found something I had never noticed before. Along the inner seam of the dress, hidden between the stitches, was another line of writing. So faint it almost vanished when I blinked. I held it to the light, my heart pounding. The thread shimmered and revealed a single phrase stitched in silver. She will not be forgotten. The words hit me harder than I expected. I felt her, no, me, us, aching somewhere deep in my chest. It wasn't anger or fear anymore. It was sorrow. Endless, quiet sorrow. I whispered, "Who are you?" But the question turned inside out in my head. Who am I now? The mirror rippled again, and I saw flashes, moments that weren't mine. A small room lit by candlelight. A woman standing before the same mirror, tears streaking her cheeks. Someone pounding on a door. A voice, low and furious, shouting a name I couldn't quite hear. The woman, my reflection, clutching the dress, whispering words I didn't know but felt in my bones. A plea, a spell, a promise not to disappear. And then, silence again. When the vision faded, I stood there trembling, the taste of salt and lavender on my lips. The dress glowed faintly in the moonlight, like it was breathing. I pressed my palm against the mirror and said, barely above a whisper, "You won't be forgotten. I promise." The reflection smiled. Not that eerie, ghostly smile from before, but something soft, something human. And for the first time, I felt warmth instead of chill. The room dimmed, and I realized I was crying. Not her tears, mine. Because I understood now. The curse wasn't about punishment. It was about remembrance. About carrying her forward. But something deep inside me still wondered, if she was being remembered through me, then where did I go? By the 8th night, I could no longer tell where she ended and I began. My reflection followed me like a twin made of mist, each movement in perfect harmony, each expression too synchronized to belong to two separate beings. The old mirror had become my silent companion, half confessor, half captor. When I looked into it, I didn't see fear anymore. I saw calm, the kind that comes right before surrender. Outside, the world carried on with its indifference, people rushing to work, cars flashing past the window, rain washing the streetlights into streaks of gold. But inside, time folded around me, looping quietly like the thread that bound me to her. That morning, I found the final piece. It was hidden beneath the lining of the dress, a small charm, shaped like a sewing needle, dulled by time. It had words etched so faintly, I had to hold it to the light. Finish the pattern. I didn't understand what that meant until I realized my hands were already moving, threading the needle with the white strand that had appeared beside my bed days ago. I didn't think. I simply knew where to stitch. Along the hem, a curve, a loop, a final knot. As the thread pulled tight, a shiver ran through me, and I felt her, the woman whose face I wore, step closer from somewhere unseen. The air thickened. My heart slowed. She appeared in the mirror again, clear as daylight. No longer a ghost, just present. Her expression wasn't sorrowful this time. It was grateful. "You've finished it," she whispered. "What happens now?" I asked. My voice was barely my own anymore. It carried an echo, hers woven through mine like harmony. "Now," she said gently, "you live." The mirror pulsed once, a ripple of light expanding outward, filling the room like dawn spilling through a window. I shut my eyes. The world tilted, and when I opened them again, the glass was still. She was gone. But the dress was no longer tight, no longer fused to my skin. It hung lightly now, soft and ordinary, as if its work was done. I touched the fabric and felt only silk, no heartbeat, no warmth. Just cloth. In the mirror, I saw myself, only myself, but different. My features still bore traces of her, the grace she left behind, the quiet confidence in my posture. Yet it was me looking back now. Me, but remade. The house phone rang then, startling me. My friend's voice burst through, worried and breathless, asking where I'd been. I wanted to tell her everything, but when I opened my mouth, all I said was, "I'm okay. I just needed time." And somehow that was true. When I hung up, I turned toward the mirror one last time. The reflection smiled, not eerily, not supernaturally, just warmly. A shared secret. In the faintest corner of the glass, where dust caught the sunlight, I thought I saw the curve of another smile beside mine, translucent, fading. A whisper brushed the air. "Thank you." The lavender scent lingered for only a moment before dissolving completely. And the silence that followed didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt whole. The days that followed moved quietly, as if the world itself was tiptoeing around me. I kept the dress folded neatly in a cedar box, wrapped in new linen, sealed with a small ribbon. Every so often, I'd open the lid and trace the fabric with my fingertips. It was cool now, no pulse, no whisper, no shimmer, but still impossibly soft. Still beautiful. Sometimes, I caught myself glancing at the mirror, waiting for her shadow to appear again. It never did. What remained was my own reflection, calmer, steadier, eyes a shade brighter than I remembered. I was still adjusting to the changes, the subtleties that others noticed before I did. The softness of my voice, the quiet grace in how I moved, the confidence that wasn't borrowed anymore. There were moments when I'd forget the dress altogether, when the day carried me easily through its small rituals, making tea, tending to the plants on my windowsill, watching the light shift on the walls. But at night, I'd feel her near, not hauntingly, but gently, like the echo of a song that used to mean something. One evening, while cleaning the room, I noticed something I'd never seen before, a thin seam of silver light running along the edge of the mirror's frame. It pulsed faintly, almost breathing. When I brushed my fingers over it, warmth bloomed beneath the glass. And then I heard her voice again, soft as silk but distant now, almost like memory itself speaking. A promise kept is never lost. The words filled the room like a sigh, tender and final. The light faded, and the mirror went still. I didn't cry this time. I only smiled, because I finally understood. She hadn't taken me. She had trusted me. To carry her story forward, to give her spirit the ending she had been denied. That night, I took out the dress once more, held it against my chest, and whispered, "You're free." The fabric fluttered lightly in my hands, as though exhaling, and for a fleeting second, I felt her embrace. Not around me, but through me. A warmth that filled my lungs, my pulse, my thoughts. When I set the dress down, the air was still again. Peaceful. I closed the cedar box, slid it gently under the bed, and felt no weight, no curse, no echo, just quiet gratitude. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreams. Weeks turned into months, and life began to move again, cautiously at first, then freely. The mirror no longer frightened me. I caught myself looking into it often, not searching, not questioning, just being. My reflection was a stranger I had come to know intimately, someone born of fear and grief, but shaped into something gentler, more true. Sometimes I still thought about the attic, the dust that danced in the light, the way the silk first felt against my skin. The memory came like a dream you almost forget upon waking, half beautiful, half sorrowful, completely real. But I no longer flinched when I remembered her. The woman in the dress. The one whose life had spilled into mine. She wasn't gone, not really. She lived quietly within the small habits she left behind. How I tilt my head when I think, how I hum without noticing, how I take care when folding fabric as though it might breathe. I didn't wear the dress again, but I kept it close, a silent guardian of everything that had changed me. One morning, I decided to visit her grave. It took me weeks to find the name, buried deep in the town's faded archives, hidden beneath layers of neglect. But when I did, when I finally stood before the weathered stone carved with the faintest outline of her initials, It felt like walking into the end of a story that had been waiting too long to be told. The wind carried the scent of lavender through the grass. I knelt, resting the photograph, the one that had once shown her eyes as mine, against the stone. The paper had aged, but the ink remained, the same 5 words scrawled across the back: return what cannot be kept. I smiled, the kind of smile that aches but heals. I think I understand now, I whispered. It was never the dress that was cursed. It was the forgetting. The wind quieted. The sunlight fell through the trees, warm and golden, and for a single breath I felt her there beside me, not as a ghost, not as a shadow, but as something softer, lighter. Gratitude, maybe. Release. When I looked back at the mirror that night, the reflection felt whole. Not 2 souls tangled, but one story resolved. My story. And though I would never wear the dress again, sometimes, just before sleep, I would catch the faintest trace of lavender in the air, and it didn't scare me anymore. It made me smile, because I knew what it meant. She had been remembered, and I had been found. The glass stayed still. The silence was kind. The curse was over.